Hey everyone! So today I have three 3D printers that I'm going to talk about. The Ankermake M5, the Elegoo Neptune 3 Max, and the Flashforge Adventurer 5M. The reason I'm testing all three of these is because they were a really good deal in the marketplace and I couldn't resist going for it. So now I actually have four. There was two Ankermake M5s, and then I got these printers to play around with. So I've now had them for about a week, and I've been using them to print my wildlife wobble games this last week to test them out. And that's actually gone pretty well. It's gotten a pretty good idea of how each printer works. Those are the three 3D printers. Before we go any farther though, we should definitely stop and take a moment to acknowledge the fact that I did have prior opinions, and I'm going to talk about that for a second right now. So the Ankermake was definitely the one I was the most excited to test because I'd been seeing it on YouTube. Like, I remember when it released on Kickstarter and there was a ton of hype about it. So I was curious to see if it actually was any good, especially because it was like $600-700 at the time. Now I believe Anker's actually stopped supporting it or is in the process of doing that or in switching to another brand. But in regards to this printer, that was still the one that I was thinking would probably be the best because software and everything else, it's Anker as well, so that was the one I had the highest hopes for. This Elegoo one, I didn't really think much of it. I was figuring it's probably just a larger Ender 3, so anything better than an Ender 3 would be a step up in my mind. And yes, I'm not the biggest fan of Enders. I never really was. I always had Pruses beforehand before kind of moving over to Bambu. So yeah, that's what I kind of thought of this one. I didn't really know a ton about it. I did see the massive one Elegoo made and never considered that one before. And then finally, the Flashforge is definitely, I've always seen it as a school printer. I never really saw it as a personal printer just because they advertise to the education market so much and they have a very locked-in software which makes them kind of a pain. At least that was what I had thought because I remember having to use their slicer and all of that. And at the time their slicer was not very good because I did actually have to set up a couple Flashforge. They were different models a couple years ago, but since then they released this and I had no idea how it was. It looks decent, it's a Core XY, so that had my hopes up a little bit. But yeah, that was what my impressions and thoughts were going into this. Definitely Ankermake was my most hyped one. Before we go into ease of use, everything else like that, let's talk about the prints. So each one printed one of these bats. I wanted to kind of test the speed and the quality. So quality wise, this was the Bambu A1 Mini. And then the Flashforge, Elegoo, and Anker. And so then, as far as quality, here I'll have a close-up, but the two best ones are definitely the Bambu and, surprisingly, the Flashforge. The Flashforge actually had really good quality until you realize the fact that it also took 46 minutes to print. The Elegoo 3 took 40 minutes, and the Anker took 24, and the Bambu took 20. This was including the leveling and everything. Otherwise, these two are about the same with 40 minutes. This one is still around the 20-minute mark, and the Bambu is also around the 20-minute mark. That definitely does not include the full story though, as this printer, while it is actually really fast, and the user interface and everything is actually pretty smooth, the biggest issue and complaint that I have that has kind of stopped me from using it all the time has been the noise. You can't really tell right now because I turned it off and then turned it back on, but the fan itself is super loud. The Anker is just loud as heck. This one's nearly silent, and the Flashforge is kind of in between the two, but that one's by far the loudest printer I've ever owned. Otherwise, aside from that, the Ankermake definitely is my favorite. It has the best user interface, the buttons. It does have a different slicer, so kind of like Bambu Lab, but pretty much all of them have different slicers now. The only one that actually uses the same slicers that it used to be, like Prusa Slicer and Cura, is the Elegoo. it doesn't have a profile really set up either in Prusa Slicer, so I just used the temporary one, and hence used the default speeds. Could it be sped up? Probably. That said, all of the slicers of all three of these are more updated, so they're not as bad as what I pictured the old Flashforge app to be. In fact, they still have it. I was just using the Orca slicer, which is pretty much a copy-paste Bambu Studio. Anker is also pretty similar, so switching between the three is not really a problem. All based on Prusa Slicer, so there's that as well. One other thing with the Ankermake that may be kind of a turning off point is the extruder. You do have to, it is kind of a pain to open it up and replace it. I actually had to do that with the other one I had. The other one had a replacement one though, so I just popped it in and took out the old one. That is a bit of a pain. I don't know how often they die or have troubles, but that is something to be aware of with the Ankermake, especially because they may or may not continue selling these extruder heads, which would kind of make this harder to replace, if not impossible, later on. Okay, so now for the Elegoo. By far the best feature of this is just how large it is. It was way larger than I thought it would be, and actually getting it into the car from the guy I bought it was kind of a struggle. It had to be turned sideways and still barely fit inside my car. Too bad I didn't have a picture, but it was actually funny to see 4 of these printers just in my small Chevy Cruze. Anyways, leveling this bed is definitely the biggest complaint. I kind of figured it would be. I've not done a full build plate test because the one I did where I was trying to utilize most of it didn't entirely work, the build plate, especially because it's a batch print. If you had one large print, it would be easier to get that going on, but yeah. That is definitely going to be a struggle. What I was surprised about though is for the price of this printer, when I looked it up, it's new, it's like $300, $400. It actually comes with a lot of features here in the settings. It has lights that you can turn on and off right here. And it's kind of cool that you can take this off and then just move it like its own little phone. So that was kind of cool. It definitely felt like an upgraded Ender 3 with a larger build volume. So that was awesome. Now finally, the Flashforge. The Flashforge is definitely better than I had expected. When I got it, it did have a problem with the extruder, and all I had to do was take it apart and then just loosen a piece of filament that was stuck in there. By far the strangest thing with this printer is the loading and unloading. You have to actually cut it to unload it. It can't reverse and just retract the filament that way, so that was really odd. So yeah, that was really strange, but it does print really nicely, has smooth prints. It just comes with the cost of taking forever. But after looking that up, that may be due to volumetric speed, which is causing it to slow down. Alright, so those are the printers. Those are kind of the things that I like and dislike about those printers. They're definitely not at the same caliber as the Bambu Labs. The Bambu Labs, from my experience, are still better. They do have some perks, like the Bambu Labs tend to waste a lot of filament, and that's kind of a pain. I actually really like the interface and how the Bambu Labs have the beeping like I've mentioned in previous videos, and these current printers don't have that. The Anker is definitely the closest to that, as it has the beep noise, but it's like a sharp serial. There's simple things. These simple things is what make the Bambu Lab really good, and the fact that the print quality and the reliability and everything with it is there. The Anker also has a camera, so like the Bambu Labs, it's pretty similar in that way. And actually, if you were to get an A1 Mini and an Anker M5 right now, they're very similar priced, at least if you want a refurbished Ankermake, which honestly, I would be considering either way, because the Anker is bigger and has pretty similar quality. It's slightly worse, so if that's top priority, then still the Bambu Lab. But actually, I was pleasantly surprised by them. The Flashforge is still my least favorite, but hey, I got to try it out, so that was great. And the Elegoo, if I have any big projects, then that's great. And like I mentioned in the video, I just got these 4 printers because they were on a really good deal. All 4 of them, plus a whole bunch of filament, were like $500, which couldn't really beat that. So hence the reason I'm testing them out. Hopefully you found my insights helpful. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments, and I'll try and answer them at least within the first 2 weeks or so. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye. Boom! Here in Anchorage. Yeah, I ran to the top of this hill for this video. But it was so worth it. Like, look at this. Woo!